Space Research Station Tempest 7 orbited the gas giant Kronos like a metallic barnacle clinging to a whale. From a distance, it might have appeared insignificant against the swirling storm fronts of the massive planet below, but the station housed some of humanity's most brilliant minds devoted to one purpose: the study of extraterrestrial life in the Kronos system. Dr. Nolan Pierce stared at the shifting blue-green tendrils writhing in the containment pod beneath his microscope. The carnivorous alien plant had been his primary research focus for nearly 6 months, but today he couldn't concentrate. The specimen's movements, usually so fascinating, failed to hold his attention. His mind kept drifting to the station-wide announcement from earlier that morning. A visitor, he muttered to himself. After 3 years without any contact, he glanced at his watch. 15 minutes until the meeting with the station commander. Nolan saved his notes, ran a hand through his disheveled brown hair, and closed the observation file. The plant would have to wait. The corridors of Tempest 7 buzzed with an energy Nolan hadn't felt in years. As he made his way toward the command center, snippets of conversation floated around him. So she just appeared in a small craft. Requested medical examination specifically. Looks almost human, but the sliding doors to Commander Elodie Trent's office opened with a soft hiss. Inside, 3 people waited. The commander herself, a tall woman with close-cropped silver hair and the bearing of someone used to being obeyed. Lieutenant Marcus Stein, head of security, whose perpetual scowl had deepened remarkably, and Dr. Farah Kim, the station's leading biotechnology expert, whose excited smile contrasted sharply with the lieutenant's expression. Dr. Pierce, Commander Trent nodded tersely. Thank you for joining us promptly. As you may have heard, we have a visitor. A potential infiltrator, Lieutenant Stein corrected, arms crossed over his broad chest. Commander Trent shot him a warning glance before continuing. She calls herself Laia, and she has specifically requested medical examination. Given your experience with xenobiology, I want you to lead this examination. Nolan's eyebrows rose. Me? Not Dr. Kim? She's more qualified for medical. The visitor requested you specifically, Trent interrupted. She knows of your reputation. That made Nolan pause. His research on abnormal extraterrestrial physiologies had gained some recognition in scientific circles. But to have an alien visitor ask for him by name? Curious. What do we know about her? Nolan asked. Dr. Kim leaned forward eagerly. She appears humanoid, but with blue-tinted skin that has a metallic sheen. White, almost silver hair. Her eyes gleamed with undisguised enthusiasm. She speaks perfect English and claims to have studied our species for some time. Convenient, Lieutenant Stein muttert. She arrived alone? Nolan asked. Single-occupant vessel, Trent confirmed. Unarmed, as far as we can detect. She surrendered herself voluntarily to our docking procedures. And she want a medical examination? What? Commander Trent's expression remained neutral. She says she wishes to establish biological compatibility protocols. Whatever that means, I expect you to find out. She checked her watch. You have clearance to use Medical Bay 3. Lieutenant Stein will escort both of you there. Nolan knew a dismissal when he heard one. As they exited the office, Dr. Kim caught his arm. She's extraordinary, Nolan, she whispered, eyes bright with excitement. This could be the genetic exchange opportunity the integrationists have been predicting. Nolan carefully extricated his arm from her grip. Dr. Kim's enthusiasm for genetic enhancement and integration with alien species was well known, and sometimes concerning. Let's establish basic biology first, Farah, before we start talking about exchanging genes. The walk to Medical Bay 3 felt interminable, with Lieutenant Stein's heavy footsteps echoing behind them like an ominous countdown. When they finally arrived, Nolan took a deep breath before the door slid open. Nothing in his decade of xenobiology research had prepared him for Laia. She sat calmly on the examination table, posture perfect, eyes fixed on the door as if she'd been expecting them at precisely that moment. Her skin was indeed a luminous blue with an almost metallic shimmer, but the scientific part of Nolan's brain immediately noted that the coloration wasn't uniform. Subtle patterns, almost like fingerprints, swirled across her visible skin. Her hair cascaded down her back in silver-white waves, seeming to move slightly even in the still air of the medical bay. But it was her eyes that captured Nolan's attention. Large, almond-shaped, with irises that shifted between deep violet and midnight blue, like the nebulae he'd observed as a student. Astronomer. Dr. Nolan Pierce, she said, her voice melodic but with an unusual timbre, as if multiple tonal tracks overlapped when she spoke. I've looked forward to meeting you. Nolan swallowed, suddenly aware that he was staring. Miss Laia, is it? I understand you've requested a medical examination. She smiled, an expression so human yet subtly different that it created an uncanny valley effect. Yes, I believe it would benefit both our species to establish a baseline understanding of our biological differences and similarities. Lieutenant Stein positioned himself by the door, hand resting not so subtly on his sidearm. Dr. Kim moved to the monitoring equipment, fingers already flying across the touchscreen as she prepared the scanners. May I ask why you selected me specifically? Nolan asked as he pulled on examination gloves. Laia's head tilted slightly. Your research on the adaptive reproductive mechanisms of the European deep-fin arthropods was illuminating. Few humans understand how variable biological systems can be while still achieving the same essential outcomes. Nolan blinked in surprise. That paper had been published in an obscure journal 3 years ago. You're familiar with my work? I make it my business to know who might understand my uniqueness. Her smile widened. Shall we begin? The initial examination proceeded routinely enough. Heart rate, or what appeared to be a heart equivalent, slightly faster than human baseline. Respiration similar to human patterns, but with higher oxygen efficiency. Blood, if the iridescent blue-purple fluid could be called that, with cellular structures unlike anything Nolan had ever seen. Everything was remarkable, but not alarmingly alien until the full-body scan. That can't be right, Nolan muttered, staring at the display. He adjusted the settings and ran the scan again. The image remained the same. In the region corresponding to reproductive organs, the scan showed a complex, densely innervated structure that appeared to be in constant, fluid motion. Is there a problem, Dr. Pierce? Laia asked, though her tone suggested she knew exactly what he was seeing. This area here, Nolan indicated the scan, professionalism momentarily overriding his shock. It appears to be moving independently, almost like tentacles, Laia supplied helpfully. Yes, my reproductive system includes prehensile appendages that function autonomously when necessary. Lieutenant Stein shifted uncomfortably by the door. Dr. Kim moved closer to the screen, eyes wide with scientific fascination. Autonomously, Nolan repeated. You mean they have their own nervous system? A secondary neural network. Yes, Laia confirmed. They respond to hormonal cues, but also possess independent sensory capabilities and limited decision-making functions. Nolan stared at the scan. The structure resembled nothing so much as a small octopus, nestled inside her body, its appendages coiled but clearly capable of extending through what appeared to be a specialized channel. That's remarkable, he managed. May I ask the evolutionary purpose of such a system? Laia's smile took on a mysterious quality. Perhaps that's something we can discover together, Dr. Pierce. With more extensive examination. The suggestive tone wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Lieutenant Stein coughed loudly. Dr. Kim looked like she was barely containing 1,000 questions. I'd like to take some tissue samples. If you're willing, Nolan said, struggling to maintain scientific detachment. With your consent, of course. You have my consent to examine me as thoroughly as you wish, Dr. Pierce, Laia said, the double entendre hanging in the air between them. I believe this will be the beginning of a most fruitful collaboration. As Nolan prepared the sampling equipment, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was far more to Laia's visit than simple scientific exchange. The way she watched him, analytical yet somehow intimate, sent an involuntary shiver down his spine. What the hell am I getting into? He muttered under his breath as he labeled the first sample container. But despite his unease, He couldn't deny the thrill of scientific discovery pulsing through him. This was, as his journal would later describe it, truly a case worth studying. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The following days saw Tempest 7 divide into factions faster than bacterial cultures in Nolan's lab. Commander Trent had authorized Laia to move freely within non-restricted areas of the station, a decision that Lieutenant Stein vocally opposed at every opportunity. She hasn't undergone proper quarantine protocols, Stein argued during the 3rd emergency staff meeting in as many days. We know nothing about potential pathogens she might carry, not to mention the security risk of allowing an unknown alien entity access to our systems. I've conducted extensive pathogen screening, Nolan countered, slides of microscopic examinations projected on the conference room wall. Her biology is different enough from ours that cross-species infection is highly unlikely. Unlikely isn't impossible, Stein shot back. Commander Trent raised a hand, silencing both men. Dr. Pierce's assessment is noted, as are your security concerns, Lieutenant. For now, the visitor remains under surveillance, but is granted limited access privileges. Dr. Pierce, continue your examinations. I want daily reports. The meeting dispersed, but Nolan found himself cornered by Dr. Kim in the hallway. The tentacular reproductive system, she whispered, eyes bright with excitement. Have you mapped its neural pathways yet? The implications for biointegration are staggering. Nolan stepped back slightly, uncomfortable with her intensity. Farah, we're still at the basic analysis stage. And shouldn't we be concerned about why Laia is really here? No one travels interstellar distances just for a medical checkup. Dr. Kim waved her hand dismissively. Of course she has other motives. But can't you see? This could be the evolutionary catalyst the integrationists have been waiting for. A truly symbiotic adaptation that could enhance human capabilities. Or it could be a biological weapon designed to look attractive to scientists like us, Nolan countered, surprised by his own skepticism. Usually, he was the one championing open-minded approaches to alien biology. You don't believe that, Kim said, studying his face. You're just as fascinated as I am. I've seen how you look at her specimens. And at her. Nolan felt heat rise to his face. That's not. It's natural, Kim continued, undeterred. She's new, different, exciting. Just be careful that your personal interest doesn't cloud your scientific judgment. With that parting shot, she strode away, leaving Nolan feeling uncomfortably exposed. He made his way to the lab, where numerous samples from Laia were undergoing analysis. The most intriguing by far were the tissue samples from her reproductive system. Under the microscope, the cells displayed an organizing principle unlike anything in Earth biology. Each cell seemed to function both independently and as part of a coordinated whole, with neural-like connections forming and dissolving as he watched. Admiring my inner workings, Dr. Pierce? Nolan jumped, nearly knocking over the microscope. Laia stood in the doorway, her luminous skin seeming to glow under the lab's harsh lighting. I didn't hear you come in, he said, composing himself. I move quietly when I wish to, she replied, gliding toward him with a grace that seemed almost liquid. What have you discovered about me today? Nolan cleared his throat, pointing to the microscope display. Your cells display a remarkable degree of autonomy, while still maintaining collective function. It's as if each cell has its own mini-brain, yet all are networked into a coherent system. Not unlike your human brain cells, she observed, leaning closer than strictly necessary. Though yours are more fixed in their connections. Less adaptable. Is adaptability important to your species? Essential, she said simply. We believe that evolution is not merely reactive but can be anticipatory. She studied him with those shifting nebula eyes. Your species still views evolution as a passive process, something that happens to you, not something you direct. Some humans are more interested in directed evolution than others, Nolan said, thinking of Dr. Kim and her integrationist views. Yes, Laia agreed. Your colleague Dr. Kim has expressed great interest in such possibilities. She believes humans should embrace biological enhancement through alien integration. Something in her tone made Nolan uneasy. And what do you believe, Laya? Her smile revealed teeth that were just a shade too pearlescent to be human. I believe in offering opportunities, Dr. Pierce. Whether they are accepted, that is a choice each must make individually. Before Nolan could press further, the lab door opened and Lieutenant Stein entered, his perpetual scowl deepening at the sight of them, standing so close together. Dr. Pierce, he said stiffly, Commander Trent requests your presence. Immediately. Nolan nodded, gathering his notes. We'll continue this discussion later, he told Laya, who merely smiled that mysterious smile again. As he followed Stein out, Nolan couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just transpired. Some offer had been extended beneath the surface of their conversation, though he couldn't quite grasp its nature. Commander Trent was reviewing security footage when Nolan entered her office. She didn't look up. Our visitor has been exploring the station quite thoroughly, she said, gesturing to the screens where Laya could be seen moving through various corridors, pausing occasionally to examine equipment or interfaces. She's curious, Nolan said. That's not surprising. Curious about our communication arrays, our propulsion systems, our defense capabilities, Trent countered. Less interested in our hydroponics or recreation areas. Nolan frowned. You think she's gathering intelligence? I think, Trent said carefully, that we should consider all possibilities, including that her interest in you specifically may be strategic rather than scientific. The suggestion stung more than Nolan cared to admit. With respect, Commander, her biology is genuinely unprecedented. The research value alone. I'm aware of the scientific significance, Trent interrupted, but I'm responsible for this station and everyone on it. Lieutenant Stein's concerns may be overstated, but they're not unfounded. She fixed Nolan with a penetrating stare. Has she asked about Earth? Our defenses? Our vulnerabilities? No, Nolan said honestly. Our discussions have focused almost exclusively on comparative biology. Trent didn't look entirely convinced. Continue your research, Dr. Pierce, but remember your primary loyalty is to this station and to humanity. If you observe anything suspicious, I expect to be informed immediately. The warning was clear, and Nolan left feeling vaguely insulted. Did Trent think him so easily manipulated? So blinded by scientific curiosity that he'd compromise security? Yet as he walked back toward the lab, he had to admit that Laya fascinated him on levels beyond the purely scientific. There was something in her otherworldly grace, her enigmatic smiles, that drew him in despite his professional instincts. When he reached the lab, he found it empty. A small sample container sat on the counter with a note beside it, for your private analysis. Some questions are best explored in solitude. Inside the container was a small, luminescent tendril, one of the tentacles from Laya's reproductive system, apparently voluntarily donated. Nolan stared at it for a long moment, torn between scientific excitement and apprehension. Against his better judgment, he prepared a slide and placed it under the microscope. What he saw left him breathless. The tissue was alive, responsive, moving with purpose, even separated from its host. As he watched, it seemed to react to his observation, coiling and uncoiling as if aware of his gaze. Impossible, he whispered, adjusting the magnification. At the cellular level, the tentacle's tissues were reorganizing themselves, forming new neural-like pathways before his eyes. So absorbed was he in the observation that he didn't notice the station's alarm system until it blared at full volume, red emergency lights pulsing throughout the lab. Attention all personnel, Commander Trent's voice echoed through the speakers. Unidentified spacecraft approaching. This is not a drill. Security protocols are now in effect. All non-essential personnel return to quarters immediately. Nolan quickly secured the sample and his notes, heart racing as he hurried toward the command center. The corridors were a flurry of activity, crew members either rushing to emergency stations or retreating to secure areas. When he arrived at the command center, chaos reigned. Screens displayed a vessel unlike any Nolan had seen before, organic-looking, with flowing lines that defied conventional spacecraft design, metallic blue-silver like Laia's skin. It appeared from nowhere. One of the texts was saying, "No warp signature, no conventional propulsion detected. Where's the alien?" Lieutenant Stein demanded, storming into the center behind Nolan. "She's gone from her quarters." Commander Trent's face hardened. "Find her. Now." "I'll help," Nolan volunteered, ignoring Stein's suspicious glare. If anyone could find Laia, it would be him, not because of any special connection, he told himself, but because he'd spent the most time studying her movements and behavior. As the station's power fluctuated, emergency lights casting everything in an eerie red glow, Nolan made his way toward the cargo base. Instinct told him Laia would seek an area with direct access to space and minimal supervision. Cargo Bay 4 was officially listed as storage for non-essential research equipment, but Nolan knew it also housed some of the more sensitive communications equipment, backup systems that could, if necessary, operate independently from the station's main grid. The door was locked, but Nolan's research clearance granted him access. Inside, dim emergency lighting revealed a space cluttered with crates and equipment, and at the far end, Laia, bent over what appeared to be a small, organic-looking device that pulsed with the same luminescence as her skin. "Laia," he called softly. She turned, unsurprised, as if she'd been expecting him. "Dr. Pierce, I apologize for the alarm. My people are protective." "Your people," Nolan repeated, moving closer. "The ones on that ship out there? The ship that appeared out of nowhere and is causing our systems to malfunction. A simple compatibility issue between our technologies," she said, gesturing to the device. "This is a bioneural beacon. It allows me to communicate with the vessel." "What are you telling them?" Her nebula eyes fixed on his. "That I am safe. That I have found what I was sent to find." A chill ran down Nolan's spine. And what was that exactly? Someone who could understand. Someone open-minded enough to see the potential in difference, yet cautious enough to ensure it was implemented wisely. She took a step toward him. "You, Dr. Pierce." "Me? What?" "My species, the Sayari, have been observing humanity for decades. We've watched your rapid technological advancement, but noted that your biological evolution lagged behind. This creates instability." Nolan frowned. "So what? You're here to help us evolve?" "To offer a possibility," she corrected. "My reproductive system, which you find so fascinating, represents one path forward. A symbiotic neural network that could accelerate human cognitive and adaptive capabilities, but must be accepted willingly, with full understanding." "That's why you came to me," Nolan realized. "You wanted a scientific assessment, eh? Validation of your offer." "Yes," she admitted, "and more. The joining I propose is not merely biological. It requires compatibility on multiple levels." The implications hit Nolan like a physical blow. "You're proposing some kind of interspecies reproduction? Using those tentacles to what? Rewire human genetics?" "To enhance," she corrected gently. "To open dormant pathways already present in your DNA. My people believe humanity has untapped potential, locked away by evolutionary accidents or deliberate ancient intervention." Before Nolan could respond, the cargo bay door burst open. Lieutenant Stein and two security officers rushed in, weapons raised. "Step away from her, Dr. Pierce," Stein ordered. "She's under arrest for sabotage and espionage." "Wait," Nolan began, moving instinctively to place himself between Laia and the weapons. "She's just trying to communicate with her ship. There's no sabotage happening here." "That device is interfering with our systems," Stein snapped. "And her ship has disabled our defensive capabilities." "Move aside, Doctor." Laia placed a gentle hand on Nolan's shoulder. "It's all right," she said softly. "I anticipated this reaction. It is fear speaking, not reason." "The only thing speaking is station security protocol," Stein growled, advancing with restraints. "You're coming with us for questioning, and that device is being confiscated." As Stein secured the restraints around Laia's wrists, she locked eyes with Nolan, her gaze intense and meaningful. For a brief, disorienting moment, Nolan felt as if she were speaking directly into his mind. Asterisk, help me, and I can help your species. Stop them, and I will show you wonders beyond imagination. Asterisk. The sensation vanished as quickly as it had come, leaving Nolan shaken and uncertain as Stein and his officers led Laia away. The bioneural beacon still pulsed on the cargo bay floor, its rhythm somehow matching the beating of Nolan's heart. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The emergency meeting that followed was tense. The station's senior staff divided in their assessment of the situation. She must be turned over to Earth authorities immediately, Lieutenant Stein insisted. Her ship is clearly hostile, and she's been gathering intel on our systems since arrival. That's speculation, Dr. Kim countered. The interference could be unintentional, and the scientific value of cooperation with her species could be immeasurable. Cooperation? Stein scoffed. She infiltrated our station under false pretenses and activated some kind of alien technology without authorization. That's not cooperation, that's an attack. Commander Trent, looking weary, turned to Nolan. Dr. Pierce, you've spent the most time with her. Your assessment. All eyes turned to him. Nolan took a deep breath, aware that his words would significantly impact Laia's fate and possibly the future relationship between humans and the Sayari. I believe Laia came here with a genuine offer, he began carefully. The Sayari appear to have technology far beyond ours, yet she arrived alone, unarmed, and surrendered herself voluntarily. If conquest were their aim, there would be more efficient methods than this elaborate charade. Then what does she want? Trent pressed. To share, Nolan said simply. Based on my analysis of her biology, particularly her reproductive system, I believe the Sayari have evolved a form of neural symbiosis that allows for accelerated adaptation and possibly enhanced cognitive function. And she wants to, what? Breed with humans? Stein's disgust was evident. Not exactly, Nolan replied, choosing his words with care. The tentacles in her reproductive system aren't just for reproduction in the conventional sense. They contain a secondary neural network, capable of interfacing with other nervous systems. Think of it as a biological form of information exchange. Like a living USB drive, one of the engineers muttered. More sophisticated than that, Nolan corrected. It's a two-way exchange that could, theoretically, activate dormant genetic potential already present in human DNA. Exactly. Dr. Kim leaned forward eagerly. This is what the integrationists have theorized for decades. Biological enhancements that work with our existing genome rather than replacing it. Commander Trent's expression remained skeptical. And the risks? What's to prevent this neural interface from rewriting human consciousness entirely? Or introducing some kind of biological control mechanism? It was a valid concern, one that had occurred in Nolan as well. That's why further research is essential before any human application is considered. We need to understand exactly how this technology works and establish proper safeguards. Research using what subjects? Stein demanded. Who volunteers to have alien tentacles rewire their brain? An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Nolan knew what he had to say next would be controversial. I would, he said quietly, under controlled conditions, with full monitoring and an emergency protocol in place. The uproar was immediate and predictable. Stein called it a security nightmare. Dr. Kim praised his scientific courage while clearly disappointed she hadn't been first to volunteer. Several other staff members voiced concerns about unknown long-term effects. Commander Trent silenced them all with a sharp gesture. No one is volunteering for experimental alien neural interfaces on my station, she said firmly. Regardless of the potential benefits, the risks are simply too great without extensive preliminary research. She fixed Nolan with a stern look. I understand your scientific curiosity, Dr. Pierce, but your suggestion borders on recklessness. The alien remains in custody until Earth Central Command provides further instructions. Her device will be studied under quarantine protocols. That's final. As the meeting disbanded, Nolan found himself torn between professional disappointment and a nagging sense that Commander Trent was right. His eagerness to explore Laia's biology, and perhaps his personal attraction to her, had led him to propose something potentially dangerous without adequate safeguards. Yet as he returned to his lab to continue analyzing the samples he'd already collected, he couldn't shake the feeling that an unprecedented opportunity was slipping away. If Laia was right about dormant human genetic potential, her technology could represent the next great leap in human evolution. The station shuddered suddenly, lights flickering. A moment later, the emergency alert sounded again. Warning, unidentified energy surge detected. All personnel proceed to emergency stations. Nolan rushed to the nearest viewpoint. Outside, the Sayari vessel had moved closer, its organic metallic surface rippling with pulses of energy that sent waves of interference through Tempest 7 systems. They're coming for her, Nolan realized, and we're not prepared for whatever technology they possess. Making a split-second decision, he headed not toward his emergency station, but toward the detention area where Laia was being held. If conflict was inevitable, perhaps she could help prevent it, or at least minimize casualties. The detention level was in chaos when he arrived. Power fluctuations had disabled the security locks, and alarms blared as emergency protocols attempted to compensate. 2 security officers lay unconscious near Laia's cell, which stood open and empty. Nolan found her in the adjacent security office, her restraints discarded, hands moving with blurring speed over the control panels. "Laia," he called urgently. "What are you doing?" She turned, expression serene despite the chaos around them. "Preventing an unnecessary conflict. My ship detected my restraint and initiated a rescue protocol. I am sending them assurances of my safety. By knocking out security personnel?" They were unwilling to listen, she said simply. "The neural disruption is temporary and harmless." Nolan moved closer, noting that the control panel displayed ship-to-ship communication protocols. "Commander Trent needs to know what's happening. This looks like sabotage from her perspective." "Then help me explain," Laia urged, eyes suddenly intense. "You understand my purpose here better than anyone else on this station. Tell them I mean no harm, that I offer evolution, not destruction." Before Nolan could respond, Lieutenant Stein appeared in the doorway, weapon raised, face contorted with fury and vindication. "I knew it," he spat. "Step away from her, Dr. Pierce. This time she won't be getting comfortable detention quarters." "Lieutenant, wait," Nolan pleaded, raising his hands. "She's trying to stop her ship from attacking. This is a misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding was trusting you with access to her," Stein snapped, advancing into the room. "As far as I'm concerned, you're both under arrest now." In the split second that followed, several things happened simultaneously. Stein lunged forward, Laia moved within human speed to intercept him, and Nolan found himself caught between them as energy weapon and alien biology collided. There was pain, bright and electric, as Stein's weapon discharged. Nolan felt himself falling, witnessed with strange detachment as Laia caught him, her hands glowing with the same luminescence as her ship. Something cool and sinuous, one of her reproductive tentacles, he realized distantly, extended from beneath her clothing and made contact with his temple. The world exploded into light and sensation. It wasn't just telepathy, though that would be the closest human concept. Nolan experienced Laia's consciousness enveloping his own, not invading or controlling, but merging, sharing, expanding his perception beyond the physical confines of his human body. Through the connection, he understood everything. The Sayari mission to find compatible species ready for the next evolutionary step. The careful selection of Tempest 7 as a first contact point due to its isolation and scientific focus. The choice of Nolan specifically because his research showed openness to radical biological adaptations. Most importantly, he felt the Sayari ship's presence, not as a distant threat, but as an extension of the same consciousness now linked with his own. With barely a thought, he reached through the connection, communicating directly with the vessel, conveying understanding, reassurance, and a request for patience. When reality reasserted itself, Nolan was propped against the wall, Lieutenant Stein unconscious beside him, and Laia kneeling before him, her tentacle retracting back beneath her clothing. "What did you do to me?" Nolan managed, his voice raspy. "I shared," she said simply. "It was incomplete. Emergency connection rather than the full symbiosis I hoped to offer, but enough to save us both." The ship-to-ship communication panel beeped, displaying a message in an alien script that somehow Nolan now understood. "Standing by. Awaiting final assessment." "They're waiting for your decision," Laia explained, helping him to his feet. "You've experienced the connection now, felt its potential. The choice of whether humanity pursues this path begins with you. This isn't a decision one person should make for an entire species," Nolan protested, though the lingering awareness from their connection had already shown him the Sayari perspective, that evolutionary leaps often began with single individuals, their experiences and adaptations gradually spreading if beneficial. "Every journey begins with a single step," Laia said, echoing his thoughts. "But I understand your hesitation. My people can wait. We have evolved patience alongside our neural capabilities." The detention-level door slid open, revealing Commander Trent and a contingent of security personnel, weapons ready. "Stand down," Nolan called, stepping forward with his hands raised. "There's been a misunderstanding." The Sayari ship was responding to Laia's distress, not initiating an attack. Commander Trent's eyes narrowed, taking in the unconscious Lieutenant Stein and the unlocked system. "Explain." Quickly. Over the next hour, in Commander Trent's office, Nolan did his best to convey what he'd learned, both through his research and through the momentary neural connection with Laia. The Sayari were not conquerors, but evolutionists, seeing themselves as catalysts for species on the cusp of major developmental leaps. "And we're supposed to just take your word for this?" Trent asked skeptically. "After you helped her escape detention and disable a security officer?" "I didn't help her escape," Nolan corrected. "I went to prevent a conflict, which is exactly what happened." Lieutenant Stein fired first. "An assertion we can't verify until he regains consciousness," Trent noted dryly. "Check the security footage," Nolan suggested. "And regarding the Sayari intentions, you don't have to take my word. Let Laia demonstrate the neural interface under controlled conditions. I've experienced it briefly already. It's not mind control, it's a sharing of consciousness." Trent studied him for a long moment. "And you trust this alien technology enough to volunteer yourself as a test subject?" "Yes," Nolan said without hesitation. "But I understand your caution. Perhaps we could establish a scientific protocol that satisfies both security concerns and research objectives." In the end, compromise prevailed. The Sayari vessel withdrew to a non-threatening distance. Laia was granted conditional research status rather than prisoner designation. And a new project was established, the Hidden Gene Activation Project, with both Nolan and Dr. Kim as lead. Researchers operating under strict oversight from Commander Trent. The bioneural beacon was relocated to a secure laboratory where its communications could be monitored. A rigorous testing protocol was established for any potential human-Sayari neural interfaces, with multiple fail-safes and emergency procedures in place. 3 weeks after what station personnel had begun calling First Contact Day, Tempest 7 had settled into an uneasy new normal. Lieutenant Stein, recovered but demoted for his impulsive actions, maintained a watchful eye on Laia's movements, but no longer openly advocated for her detention. Dr. Kim had immersed herself in studying the cellular properties of Laia's tissue samples, frequently working through the night cycle. And Nolan found himself in the unique position of being both lead researcher and research subject. "Neural activity is stable," Dr. Kim reported, monitoring the displays as Nolan sat in a specially modified medical chair, electrodes attached to his temples. Across from him, Laia sat in a similar arrangement, her silver-white hair pulled back to accommodate the monitoring equipment. "Are you ready, Dr. Pierce?" Commander Trent asked from behind the observation glass. Nolan nodded, trying to project more confidence than he felt. The brief neural connection he'd experienced during the detention-level incident had been unplanned, chaotic, a desperate measure in a crisis. This would be different, controlled, measured, recorded from every possible angle. "I'm ready," he confirmed, then looked to Laya. How does this work exactly? Laya smiled, that enigmatic smile that still sent an involuntary shiver down his spine. Relax your mind. Don't resist the initial contact. It may feel strange, but there is no danger. As the monitoring equipment hummed to life around them, Laya closed her eyes. Nolan watched, half fascinated and half apprehensive, as a slender, luminescent tendril emerged from beneath her clothing, moving with fluid grace through the air between them. Extraordinary muscle control, Dr. Kim murmured into her recorder. The appendage moves independently of her conscious muscular system, yet responds to her neural commands. The tentacle approached Nolan's face slowly, almost hesitantly, as if sensing his nervousness. When it made contact with his temple, the sensation was cool and electric, like touching a battery with a wet finger, but without the pain. And then, between one heartbeat and the next, Nolan was no longer alone in his mind. Unlike the chaotic merging during the crisis, this connection unfolded methodically, like the opening of a complex origami figure. Laya's consciousness touched his gently, allowing him to acclimate to each new level of awareness before proceeding deeper. Can you perceive me? Her thoughts weren't words exactly, but concepts, impressions that his brain translated into language. Asterisk yes. This is incredible. Asterisk Nolan found he could respond in kind, projecting thoughts rather than speaking them. This is merely the surface level. A sense of amusement colored the communication. Are you prepared to go deeper? Nolan hesitated, aware on some level that his vital signs were being monitored, that Dr. Kim was probably recording every fluctuation in brainwave activity, that Commander Trent was watching for any sign of danger. But curiosity, that defining trait that had made him a scientist, won out. Yes, the connection deepened. Suddenly, Nolan wasn't just aware of Laya's thoughts, but her memories, fragments of worlds he'd never seen, species he couldn't name, experiences beyond human conception. The Sayari perspective was fundamentally different. They experienced time not as a linear progression, but as overlapping patterns, causality as a web rather than a chain. In their understanding of biology, it made human science look primitive by comparison. Whereas humans saw organisms as discrete entities, the Sayari perceived the constant flow of genetic information across all living things, the subtle exchanges that occurred even between seemingly unrelated species. Asterisk, this is how you see us? As part of a larger biological tapestry. Asterisk, Nolan projected the question into the shared mental space. Asterisk, yes. Your species stands at a critical junction. Asterisk, images flowed between them. Humanity spreading across the solar system, developing technologies that outpaced biological adaptation, creating imbalances that threatened long-term survival. Asterisk, technology alone cannot sustain evolution. The biological must advance alongside the mechanical. Asterisk, in your tentacles, your reproductive system, that's the solution you're offering? A wave of clarification washed through the connection. Asterisk, not reproduction in your understanding. Symbiosis. Exchange. Awakening of dormant potential. Asterisk. Nolan caught glimpses of what this meant. Humans with enhanced neuroplasticity, improved cellular regeneration, extended lifespans, greater adaptation to extreme environments. Not through artificial means or cybernetic implants, but through activation of capabilities already encoded in human DNA, lying dormant since some ancient evolutionary fork in the road. Why help us? The question rose unbidden from a skeptical corner of Nolan's mind. What did the Sayari gain? Rather than offense, he felt something like respect emanate from Laya's consciousness. Asterisk, a valid question. We gain companions in a long journey. Asterisk, images of cosmic time scales, of civilizations rising and falling across millennia, of fundamental forces gradually breaking down the fabric of reality itself. Asterisk alone, no species survives the final collapse. Together, solutions become possible. Asterisk. The connection began to fade, the tentacle gently withdrawing from Nolan's temple. As it retreated, he felt a strange sense of loss, as if a limb he hadn't known he possessed was being amputated. When his awareness fully returned to the laboratory, he found Dr. Kim staring at him, wide-eyed, and Commander Trent leaning forward in her seat behind the observation glass. "Dr. Pierce?" Kim prompted. "Are you with us?" Nolan blinked, the ordinary reality of the lab suddenly seeming flat and limited after the multidimensional awareness he'd just experienced. "Yes, I'm fine." "Your neural activity was off the charts," Kim said, excitement barely contained in her voice. "We recorded patterns that don't even exist in our reference databases." "How do you feel?" "Expanded," Nolan said after a moment's consideration. "Like I've been living in 2 dimensions and suddenly experienced 3. He turned to Laia, who watched him with those nebula eyes. "Thank you for sharing that with me. What exactly did you experience?" Commander Trent's voice came through the intercom, professional but unable to completely mask her curiosity. How could he possibly explain? The connection had conveyed understanding that transcended language, perspectives that defied human conceptual frameworks. Yet he had to try. "The Sayari perceive reality differently than we do," he began slowly. "Their consciousness isn't confined to individual experience the way ours is. They naturally share awareness, connecting to each other and to other life forms through what we might call a bioneural network." "Like a hive mind?" Trent asked, frowning. "No, not at all. They maintain individual identity and autonomy. It's more like expanded empathy combined with information sharing at a biological level." Nolan struggled to find the right words. "Imagine if you could directly experience another person's perspective, access their knowledge, while still remaining yourself. And they want to give humans this capability?" Kim asked, already mentally calculating research protocols. "They want to offer it," Nolan corrected, "to those who choose it. The Tentacles, Laia's reproductive system, is not about traditional reproduction. It's a means of establishing this connection, of activating dormant neural pathways in compatible species." Commander Trent's expression remained skeptical. "And we're just supposed to trust that this activation won't fundamentally change what makes us human." It was Laia who answered, her voice melodic in the sterile lab. "Change is the essence of evolution, Commander. But we offer enhancement, not replacement. The potential we would activate exists already within your genetic code. Capabilities your species possessed in the past or might develop in the future through natural selection, merely accelerated. The question," Nolan added, "is whether humanity is ready for such acceleration." The debate that followed stretched across days, then weeks. Dr. Kim advocated enthusiastically for expanded testing, arguing that the potential benefits far outweighed theoretical risks. Lieutenant Stein, though no longer calling for Laia's imprisonment, maintained that any permanent biological alterations should be approached with extreme caution. Commander Trent, ever the pragmatist, insisted on incremental research with careful documentation of every step. Earth Central will want a comprehensive risk assessment before authorizing any wider application, she reminded them. Through it all, Nolan found himself in a unique position. The only human who had directly experienced the Sayari connection, yet still maintaining the scientific objectivity to question and analyze that experience. The regular neural interface sessions continued, each carefully monitored and recorded. With each connection, Nolan gained greater understanding of Sayari biology, culture, and evolutionary history. More importantly, he began to grasp the true nature of what they offered. Not a single leap forward, but the awakening of humanity's capacity for self-directed evolution. 6 weeks after First Contact Day, Nolan sat alone in his quarters, reviewing the latest data from their experiments. The neural patterns formed during his connections with Laia showed remarkable stability, and cellular samples taken afterward revealed subtle but measurable changes. Enhanced mitochondrial efficiency, improved neural plasticity, accelerated cellular repair mechanisms. These changes persisted even after the connection ended, suggesting that the Sayari interface initiated self-sustaining biological processes rather than dependent symbiosis. It was encouraging evidence that humans could incorporate these enhancements without becoming dependent on ongoing Sayari contact. A soft chime announced a visitor at his door. "Enter," he called, expecting Dr. Kim with more questions about the latest results. Instead, Laya glided in, her silvery hair flowing freely around her shoulders, her blue metallic skin seeming to pulse with inner light in the dim room. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," she said, though her slight smile suggested she knew very well that her presence was always a welcome disturbance. "Not at all." Nolan set aside his data pad. "I was just reviewing our progress. And are you satisfied with what you found?" She moved closer, her movements fluid as always. "Scientifically, the results are remarkable," Nolan admitted. "The enhancements appear stable, beneficial, and self-sustaining. From a research perspective, it's everything we could have hoped for. But you still have reservations." It wasn't a question. Nolan sighed. "Not about the technology itself, or your intentions, but about the implications for humanity. We've barely begun to understand our own genetic potential, and now we're considering a leap forward that might normally take millennia of evolution. Is rapid advancement so frightening?" "It's not the speed that concerns me," Nolan said slowly. "It's the question of readiness. Technological advancement, without corresponding ethical development, has already created problems for humanity. What happens when we add accelerated biological capabilities to that mix?" Laya considered this, her nebula eyes shifting through shades of violet and blue. "A valid concern. Among the Sayari, biological enhancements are paired with philosophical training, what you might call ethical development." "That's just it," Nolan said, standing to pace the small room. "The Sayari evolved these capabilities naturally, over countless generations, with cultural frameworks developing alongside them. Humans would be adopting them virtually overnight, without those same cultural safeguards. Yet your species adapts quickly," Laya countered. "Your cultural evolution occurs faster than your biological evolution, a rare trait among sentient species." "True," Nolan conceded. "But still, there is another consideration," Laya interrupted gently. "One we haven't discussed in your formal research sessions." Something in her tone made Nolan pause his pacing. "What's that?" "The connection we've established. It's stronger than your instruments can detect." She moved closer, close enough that he could see the subtle patterns in her skin, like fingerprints made of starlight. "There's a bond forming between us that transcends the neural interface." Nolan swallowed, suddenly aware of how alone they were. "Even noticed something. An awareness of your presence, even when we're not connected." "Yes." Her smile deepened. "Among my people, such resonance indicates deep compatibility. It's rare, even between Sayari, and virtually unprecedented with other species." "What does that mean exactly?" Nolan asked, though a part of him already knew. Instead of answering with words, Laya raised a hand to his face, her fingers cool against his skin. From beneath the sleeve of her garment, a slender tentacle emerged. Not the larger one used in their formal connection sessions, but a smaller, more delicate appendage that moved with almost shy hesitancy. "May I?" she whispered. Heart racing, Nolan nodded. The connection that bloomed between them this time wasn't the structured, scientific exchange of their monitored sessions. It was intimate, emotional, a sharing not just of consciousness but of essence. Nolan felt Laya's curiosity about him, her admiration for his species' resilience, her genuine desire to help humanity evolve, and beneath it all, a personal attraction that mirrored his own conflicted feelings. "This is what we truly offer," her consciousness whispered into his. Asterisk, not just enhanced biology, but enhanced connection. The end of existential loneliness. Asterisk. When the tentacle finally withdrew, Nolan found himself breathless, his perception of reality fundamentally altered. The barriers he'd maintained, between scientist and subject, human and alien, self and other, suddenly seemed arbitrary, constructs of a limited consciousness rather than immutable laws. "Now you understand," Laya said softly. "Yes," Nolan admitted, "and it terrifies me almost as much as it attracts me." "Fear is natural when facing the unknown," she said. "But you are not facing it alone." The moment hung between them, charged with possibility, until the station's alert system blared to life, shattering the intimate atmosphere. "Attention, all personnel," Commander Trent's voice echoed through the quarters. "Earth Central Command vessel approaching. Prepare for inspection and review. All research personnel report to conference room A immediately." Laya's expression shifted, a shadow passing across her features. "They've come to make their decision." Nolan felt a surge of protectiveness. "Whatever they decide, we'll present our findings objectively. The data speaks for itself. The Sayari technology is beneficial, not harmful. It is not the technology they will judge, Nolan," Laya said, using his first name for the first time. "It is the ideology behind it. For many humans, directed evolution represents a threat to your species' self-definition." The conference room was already filling with station personnel when they arrived. Dr. Kim paced anxiously. Lieutenant Stein stood rigid near Commander Trent, and various research staff clustered in groups, tension evident in their postures. "Earth Central is sending an evaluation team," Trent announced once everyone had assembled. "They've reviewed our preliminary reports and want first-hand assessment of the Sayari technology and its implications. Dr. Pierce, as lead researcher, you'll be expected to present comprehensive findings." "What's their disposition?" Nolan asked. "Are they coming with open minds, or have they already formed conclusions?" Trent's expression tightened. "The delegation includes both scientific and military representatives. I suggest we let the data speak for itself, rather than speculating about agendas." The message was clear: stick to the facts, avoid political entanglements. But Nolan knew from experience that when it came to potentially transformative technologies, politics and science were inseparable. Over the next hours, Tempest 7 prepared for the delegation's arrival. Research findings were compiled, demonstration protocols established, security measures reviewed. Through it all, Nolan felt the weight of responsibility, not just to the scientific community or to Earth Central, but to the future relationship between humans and Sayari. When the Earth vessel finally docked, the welcome was formal but tense. Admiral Helena Zhao led the delegation, her weathered face revealing nothing as she exchanged pleasantries with Commander Trent. Behind her stood a mix of uniformed military personnel and civilians in the distinctive gray attire of Earth Central's Scientific Oversight Division. "We'll begin with a comprehensive briefing," Admiral Zhao stated after introductions were complete. "I want to understand exactly what's been happening on this station." The briefing stretched for hours. Nolan presented the research findings in meticulous detail: the structure and function of Laya's reproductive tentacles, the nature of the neural interface, the documented biological enhancements resulting from connection. Dr. Kim followed with cellular analysis, demonstrating the stability and safety of the changes observed in Nolan's physiology. Throughout, Admiral Zhao listened impassively, occasionally asking pointed questions that revealed both scientific acumen and strategic thinking. The other delegation members were similarly engaged, their expressions giving away little. "And the Sayari vessel?" Zhao asked eventually. "It remains in proximity to the station." "At a respectful distance," Commander Trent confirmed. "They've made no threatening moves, initiated no unscheduled communications." "I would like to speak with the alien," Zhao declared. "Alone." The request, more of a command, sent a ripple of unease through the station staff. Nolan stepped forward. "Admiral, with respect, I should be present for any such conversation. As the only human who's experienced the neural interface, I can provide context." "Your research has been thorough, Dr. Pierce," Zhao interrupted, "but I need an unfiltered assessment. Your obvious enthusiasm for this technology suggests potential bias." The implication stung, but Nolan recognized the political reality. He nodded stiffly. "I understand, Admiral." As Laya was escorted to a private meeting room with Admiral Zhao, Nolan found himself pacing anxiously in the adjacent observation area. Though protocol prevented him from listening in, he could see them through the one-way glass. The poised, silver-haired Admiral and the luminescent alien, engaged in what appeared to be intense conversation. "She'll be fine," Dr. Kim said, joining him at the window. Laia handles herself well in diplomatic situations. It's not her I'm worried about, Nolan replied. It's Earth Central's reaction. If they perceive this technology as a threat rather than an opportunity. Kim's expression darkened. The military contingent is concerning. They're viewing this through a strategic lens, whether the Sayari technology gives humanity an advantage or a vulnerability. It's not a weapon, Nolan said firmly. It's an evolutionary catalyst. Evolution is threatening to those invested in the status quo, Kim observed. Always has been. Inside the meeting room, Admiral Zhao was leaning forward, her expression intense as Laia responded to some unheard question. Whatever the alien said caused the Admiral to sit back abruptly, eyes widening slightly. The first real emotion she displayed since arriving. After nearly an hour, the meeting concluded. Admiral Zhao emerged, her face once again composed into professional neutrality. I will be conferring with my team, she announced to the waiting staff. We will reconvene at 0800 tomorrow to discuss our assessment and recommendations. As the delegation withdrew to their assigned quarters, Laia rejoined the station personnel. Nolan immediately moved to her side. What happened in there? He asked quietly. Laia's nebula eyes met his, a complex emotion swimming in their depths. Admiral Zhao is thorough. She wished to understand the Sayari motivation, our history of interaction with other species, the long-term implications of the technology we offer. And she's cautious but not closed-minded. She understands what is at stake. Laia placed a gentle hand on Nolan's arm. The Admiral also asked many questions about you and about our connection. Nolan felt heat rise to his face. What did you tell her? The truth, Laia said simply, that our compatibility extends beyond the scientific, and that such resonance is significant among my people. Before Nolan could respond, Commander Trent approached, her expression grim. Dr. Pierce, a word. As Laia glided away to speak with Dr. Kim, Trent pulled Nolan aside, voice low and urgent. Lieutenant Stein has informed me that Admiral Zhao brought specialized containment equipment aboard. They're prepared to take Laia into custody if their assessment is unfavorable. A cold dread settled in Nolan's stomach. They can't do that. She came here voluntarily, under diplomatic protection. Technically, first contact protocols give Earth Central broad authority when it comes to extraterrestrial entities, Trent said grimly. Especially those possessing technology with potential military applications. The neural interface isn't a weapon, Nolan insisted. It's a symbiotic enhancement. That's your interpretation, Trent countered. Others might see it differently, as a means of biological infiltration or as technology too dangerous to leave in private hands. Nolan ran a hand through his hair, mind racing. What can we do? Trent's expression softened slightly. Continue presenting the facts, Dr. Pierce. That's all any of us can do at this point. But as she walked away, Nolan knew that facts alone might not be enough. The decision facing Earth Central wasn't just scientific, but philosophical. Whether humanity was ready to embrace directed evolution, to form symbiotic bonds with an alien species, to become something new and unpredictable. That night, sleep eluded him. His quarters felt confining after the expansive consciousness he'd experienced through the neural interface. His thoughts kept returning to Laia, to the connection they'd shared, to the future that hung in the balance. A soft chime at his door roused him from restless contemplation. Enter, he called, expecting perhaps Commander Trent with more concerns about tomorrow's meeting. Instead, Laia stood in the doorway, her luminescence dimmed to a subtle glow in the darkness of the corridor. Without a word, she stepped inside, letting the door close behind her. I sense your distress, she said simply. They're planning to take you into custody, Nolan said, the words tumbling out before he could consider them. If the assessment goes against us. I know. Her calm surprised him. Admiral Zhao did not hide her contingency plans for me. And you're not concerned? I am, she admitted, moving closer. But not primarily for myself. My people would recover me eventually. I am concerned for what such an action would mean for future relations between our species. We can't let it happen, Nolan said firmly. The research isn't complete. The potential benefits haven't been fully explored. There is another option, Laya said, her voice taking on a new intensity. One that would make containment efforts much more complicated. What do you mean? The connections we've established so far have been temporary, limited, but the neural interface can create a more permanent bond, a symbiosis that would allow continuous access to enhanced capabilities while maintaining individual identity. Nolan stared at her, comprehension dawning. You're suggesting a permanent connection? Between us? Yes. Her eyes held his, unblinking. It would create a biological linkage that Earth Central would find difficult to dismiss or contain. More importantly, it would demonstrate the true nature of what we offer. Partnership, not subjugation. That's a massive step, Nolan said, though part of him had been anticipating, perhaps even hoping for, this possibility since their first connection. It is, Laya agreed, and one I would not suggest if circumstances were different. But time grows short, and I believe you understand the potential better than any other human. The implications spun through Nolan's mind. Professional consequences, his credibility as an objective researcher would be questioned. Personal transformation, who would he become with continuous access to Sayari consciousness? Political ramifications, would Earth Central see this as validation or as proof of alien influence? Yet beneath these concerns ran a deeper current of recognition, that the connection with Laya had already changed him, had shown him possibilities he couldn't unsee, had awakened yearnings for a type of understanding that human interaction alone could never satisfy. If we do this, he said slowly, it has to be presented as a continuation of the research, a necessary step to fully understand the long-term implications. A reasonable approach, Laya agreed, a hint of amusement in her voice. Though we both know it would be more than an experiment. Nola took a deep breath. How would it work? Similar to our previous connections, but deeper, more comprehensive. From beneath her garment, the delicate tentacle emerged again, luminescent in the dim room. The process takes time, several hours for full integration. By morning, the symbiosis would be established. And it could be reversed? Yes, though not easily. It would require specialized Sayari technology. Her expression softened. I would not offer this if I believed it would harm you, Nolan. The use of his first name again, intimate and personal, seemed to crystallize the moment. This wasn't just about research or diplomacy or even the future of human evolution. It was about connection, the kind of profound understanding that transcended species, that offered an end to the fundamental isolation of individual consciousness. Let's do it, he said, voice steady despite the tumult of emotions beneath the surface. For science, for diplomacy, and for us. Laya's smile was radiant, her entire being seeming to glow brighter. Then relax your mind and open your thoughts. This journey will be unlike any you have experienced before. As the tentacle approached his temple, Nolan closed his eyes, surrendering to the process that would irreversibly alter his existence. The initial connection was familiar now. The cool electric sensation, the expansion of awareness, the gentle merging of consciousness. But this time, instead of withdrawing after exchanging information, the connection deepened, layer after layer of perception unfolding between them. Nolan felt his understanding of reality transforming, expanding to encompass perspectives and sensory inputs beyond human conception, colors beyond the visible spectrum, vibrations too subtle for human nerves to detect, patterns of causality spanning past and future. Most profound was the sense of presence, not just Laya's individual consciousness, but echoes of the entire Sayari collective experience, generations of knowledge and wisdom layered into a tapestry of understanding that now included him. Through it all, Nolan remained himself, his memories, his values, his core identity intact, but enhanced, contextualized within a broader framework of existence. Not replaced, but completed. When morning came, Admiral Zhao found not one, but two changed beings waiting in the conference room. Nolan Pierce, outwardly the same save for a new clarity in his eyes, and Laia, her connection to him now visible as a subtle resonance between their energy signatures. "What have you done?" the Admiral demanded, instantly alert to the transformation. "Continued the research to its logical conclusion," Nolan replied, his voice calm despite the tensions radiating from the Earth's central delegation. "The permanent symbiosis represents the true potential of Sayari technology. Not subordination of one species to another, but genuine partnership that enhances both." "This was not authorized," Admiral Zhao stated flatly. "You've compromised yourself and potentially this entire station." "With respect, Admiral, I've gained perspective that no human has ever possessed," Nolan countered. "I understand now what the Sayari offer, not just biological enhancement but cosmic context. They've navigated evolutionary transitions that humanity is only beginning to face." The standoff that followed was tense, but ultimately productive. Earth Central couldn't simply dismiss the evidence before them. A human who had integrated Sayari capabilities while retaining his humanity, who could demonstrate enhanced cognitive functions without loss of ethical judgment or autonomy. After days of examination, questioning, and debate, Admiral Zhao delivered Earth Central's preliminary assessment. The Sayari technology would be classified as restricted but not prohibited, available for research under controlled conditions with strict ethical oversight. "This is not approval," she told Nolan privately, "but neither is it rejection. You've forced open a door that many would have preferred remain closed, for better or worse." As the Earth vessel departed, taking with it comprehensive records, but leaving both Nolan and Laia at Tempest 7, a new phase of research began. The Hidden Gene Activation Project expanded, with volunteers carefully screened and the process of symbiosis meticulously documented. Some embraced the possibilities eagerly, like Dr. Kim, who integrated Sayari neural capabilities with her existing expertise in biotechnology. Others remained skeptical observers, like Lieutenant Stein, who monitored the project with vigilant caution but gradual acceptance. And beyond Tempest 7, the ripples of First Contact Day continued to spread. The Sayari vessel remained in the Chronos system, a constant reminder of possibilities waiting just beyond the familiar horizon of human experience. In his personal journal, which would eventually become the foundation for humanity's guide to symbiotic evolution, Nolan wrote, "Alien girl's reproductive organ has tentacles and moves like an octopus. Case worth studying, but the real mystery is how it might reshape our future. We stand at the threshold of a new chapter in human evolution, not one imposed upon us, but one we choose with open eyes and expanded minds. The tentacles that once seemed so alien now represent the connections that bind not just humans to Sayari, but all sentient life to the cosmos. In the end, perhaps the greatest discovery wasn't the biology of an alien species, but the potential lying dormant within ourselves, waiting only for the right catalyst to awaken." As he completed the entry, Laia's consciousness brushed against his own. Not invasive, but companionable, a reminder that whatever the future held, neither of them would face it alone. Outside the viewport of Tempest 7, the gas giant Chronos turned in its eternal orbit, storms swirling across its surface. A fitting metaphor, Nolan thought, for the turbulence and beauty of evolution itself.